Hello Bloomers, welcome to Better Future podcast. The following is a conversation with Allison Duettmann. Allison is the president of Foresight Institute. She leads the Intelligent Cooperation, Molecular Machines, Biotech and Health Extension working groups, and shares Foresight's work with the public, for example at the Wall Street Journal, World Economic Forum, TEDx, and more. Apart from that, she is an extraordinary human being that radiates existential hope, and which is why I'm glad that we did this first podcast together. Because the aim of this podcast is to highlight people building a better future and also appreciate the underappreciated, positive and solution-oriented mindset that inspires existential hope and converts people to dream about the possibility of positive futures and then work on making them reality. I don't think there is a better person than Allison to start this podcast with, because every time I talk to her, I end up leaving much more energized and hopeful about the future. So I hope that our conversation will do the same for you. With that, enjoy the conversation. I initially messaged you, I think, based on the Existential Hope website that you basically put together. And after that, after seeing some of the videos and learning about Foresight Institute, I basically, I think, applied for like some role at Foresight or try to help you with something. And that's where we met. So what is Existential Hope? And why did you create it, basically?
I think first, Existential Hope is maybe appealing because it's something different to lots of people. I don't think I can claim any role in coining the term. It was coined from a fantastic paper from Future of Humanity Institute from Toby Ord and Owen Cotton-Barratt. It's a really, really great paper, and it really rocked my world and changed my mind. It's very short, so I recommend everyone who's interested checking it out. And it is basically trying to give an alternative vision for the vision of existential risk, of just an alternative way of, I guess, thinking about the world. So if an existential risk is, an event after which the expected value of the rest of the universe is much lower than before, for example, through a catastrophe, then an existential hope is kind of like the upside risk for humanity. So, what if suddenly there would be much, much more expected value to be had in the rest of the universe than we currently have by an event, which I think they took the term from Tolkien is a eucatastrophe, so the opposite of a catastrophe. Without wanting to unload a lot of the theory up first, I think to me, I really love that framing. And it is also a little bit more of a feeling almost that you sometimes have of just, you can juxtapose existential hope to existential risk. I also juxtapose it often to really the kind of like more motivational, I guess, component of existential angst, which is, this thing that is also related to the existential risk that we're facing, but it's really this kind of like, fear of your own life being meaningless and your own life ending in a way where you haven't made much meaning of, but then also I think on a larger level, really, civilization at large and the entire life as a thing in itself being kind of like being shortcut and all the potential for life in the universe being lost. And so it's a little bit, I guess, has that feeling component to it of like, what would it mean if instead of having this existential angst in you were actually really excited, motivated, optimistic about the long-term future in a way where it is grounded in action and in a way where it's grounded in events that you can partake in. So my whole, again, very long way of windy way of explaining, I got super inspired by the paper and I was like, man, there is very little out there that actually classifies all of the different projects, people working on actively positive alternatives to the negative ones that we are, I think, really overloaded with in our media. And not only people working on it, but even just resources, telling people that a different, future may be possible. And I knew a few of them. I put them out on a website. At the beginning, it was all Google Docs, and it still is to some extent. And then lots of people started contributing in a really fantastic way. So I take responsibility for all mistakes that are on there, but all the amazing parts that were added are definitely by people that are not me. So it's kind of a living, breathing document that I invite anyone to contribute to if they're interested in.
Yeah, that's great. Like, actually, it's something that brought me in a lot because I deeply resonate with that thinking, and obviously this kind of like I guess philosophy, or like striving some kind of like framework for how to look at positive futures and how to think about it is something that's really interesting to me. So obviously I am a big fan. So following up on that with kind of like a related thing, I think you in a different talk, but opting in for a positive future, you basically talked about something similar, but in a different way. Maybe you alluded to it a bit before, like in the more like whole life scheme, but basically what you said, I'm paraphrasing, that the fact that we can act and move us towards positive futures really means that we must. I think our cosmic endowment really comes with great responsibility. If life is so rare in the universe, we really have to get it right. And as soon as we realize we have the choice to do that and that we are aware and have to justify our choices, it can be forgotten. And this gives us an imperative to action, a normative, cosmic imperative to bring about the better of those possible futures and avoid the worst ones, which resonates with me a lot. And my question, following on that, is how do you basically cultivate this like sense of cosmic endowment? Because sometimes it's not that easy to have this kind of outlook all the time. So like, do you have some kind of like a ritual that reminds you of this, or can you maybe like trace back some moments or thought processes that made you realize this, and that you can basically like on demand then use to like, get back into this thinking when something else happens that maybe is not that great?
Which not great things could you be possibly referring to in our current day and time? Yeah, point well taken. I think I updated or not updated my thinking, but I think what I meant with the cosmic endowment, and again, this is a term that was coined by Bostrom initially, is really this almost more joy in bringing this about than a sense of responsibility. And with that, I mean is that I feel personally responsible for bringing this about. I think many people in our current world don't really have even the option to think about like those lofty visions, right? I think that there's lots of people still struggling and really getting their basic needs met. So it is not something that, I want to like just lay on top of everyone, right? There's many different struggles that are so real that not everyone, should and can even, think about the long-term things. But I think once you are in a position to, wrap your head around it, it almost becomes this flabbergastingly big opportunity that we have on our hands, that I feel really compelled in making a contribution to. And I think that, there's like, I guess in the darker moments, there's, I guess, like two mind flips that don't always work. And they're not like, they're not like, a silver bullet. But sometimes I think what helps for me to think about is when I think, for example, about my own mortality, and I get really wound up by the fact that, I will die, and with that, it means that I will not see the people that I really love around and that I love collaborating with, such as you, for a long time, and see not all the amazing things that they do. If I get really upset at that point and just really wound up on the fact, that I will probably still wither if we don't hit longevity escape velocity in time, then I try to really make that mind flip and ask myself, why is this so bad? Why do I think this is so bad? And very quickly you get to the opposite side of the spectrum, which is like, it's only really so bad because the current state in life in itself is so fantastic. Like the types of friends that you have, the life that you are able to lead, living, breathing, being a creature in this world, being partaking in this like living, breathing universe is such a mind-boggling experience that that we tend to just totally blank it out because I think it's too much to actually hold in your head, right? But even just taking a walk outside, being a part of this super complex civilization that many generations before us have worked so incredibly hard to build up, even just admiring for a single moment just how amazing it is that we can do all these things, then I think you realize that the reason why I think you're or why I'm personally upset sometimes is because I'm so excited about what is already happening, and I'm just worried that it may not continue. And this holds one for me on an individual level, but that's idiosyncratic. I don't think everyone cares about the personal life extension. But on the other hand, it also holds, I think, for civilization at large, right? If we get really wound up on kind of all of the doom that is around, and about climate change, and about all of the existential risks that people are really, I think, very proactively in the media are worrying about, then I think it also sometimes just helps to get that mental flip in your head and be like, okay, why are we so upset about it? It is because we're at a point in civilization where we are able to worry about this. Like many people before us had like such an insane hardship of a life. Like I really think that, just looking at history like makes you so appreciative of where you are right now. And so it's almost a token of how far we've come that we can worry about things that are really, really pressing. Nevertheless, I don't want to downplay them, but we are in this scenario where we are fortunate enough to worry about those things, and really, I think, have to push them forward. And I think we're also in a state where, as a civilization, we're really on the cusp of creating something so much larger. And so, worrying about existential risk is really the flip side of just thinking about what else could be out there if we don't destroy ourselves first. So I think those mind flips, one on your own mortality of like what would be on the other side, really, why are you upset about this? But also I think when thinking about why are you upset about the climate change, other existential risks that are so prevalent in our news, is really because the upside risk is so high. And I think just holding that in your head and just ruminating a little bit in a vague way about what else could be available is so deeply inspiring that I think it's just a nice I guess not really a cognitive tool to have, but it works for me sometimes.
Yeah, that's great. Like we'll definitely touch on mortality and longevity later. And but I hear you that the kind of like ability to do this like perspective shifting and seeing, looking into the history and then maybe also into the future, but not just for the like bad things that could happen, but also imagine that there are also the other way, the better things that could happen. That's definitely a good one. And I noticed that you are I think that you are pretty experienced, or I guess you get some practice with this like shifting, because most of the times you seem very positive and driven. So I guess it works, or maybe like at least on the videos or call that I talk to sometimes. So where does this drive really for you like personally stem from? Do you have some like motivating factors, as you maybe alluded to the mortality as well, but like is it can you like pinpoint it if it's like downstream from the cosmic endowment and the responsibility that you feel, that you feel like pressured, or do you have like more, or is it both maybe, if you have like personal motivations, I guess, as we all do, but is there some really something like pressing from the top that you see yourself moving in the like as like an arrow of a time that keeps pressing you, or is it more of like your personal motivation, I would say?
I guess let's see. I think I am quite happy most of the time. I do think that we are at a really critical juncture right now. So I guess it's hard to say. So I do think sometimes I think if you actually consider that the junctures that we are currently at, it is almost unbearable. Like the kinds of decisions that we're making on a daily basis as a civilization are, if you do hold both possibilities in your head, are just unbearably unbearably value laden and unbearably potentially impactful. So it's really hard to just get a total impossibility to do anything from that. I think, for example, like on the one hand, I think it's really a personal almost imperative to action that gets stronger, because I do think, and maybe that's just my local view, but I do think we're really drastically accelerating in a way where many of the things that were almost impossible to say just a few years ago are now becoming possible. People are kind of gradually tipping in. And so I think we're really, and even after COVID, like we're on a much faster path, almost accelerando style, into something that is potentially really, really amazing. But on the other hand, you see all of the risks building up as well, and they're also rapidly accelerating. And so it really does seem like we're on some kind of like roller coaster that is like very fast approaching the peak, and it's unclear, whether the wheels are correctly on the track, and whether we either catapult out, in this case it would be a good thing, or whether we go downhill. and really destroyed the whole entire thing. So I think it is an imperative to action that I think I've felt for, since, I guess, since I can remember, really, of just, what if we don't destroy ourselves, like personally, but also as a civilization. But I do think it's getting stronger over time, and maybe that's my local bias, but I do think things are accelerating very fast, and in both directions. And so, yeah, it's getting a little bit more urgent, I think. I do think that there's also just this pure joy and wonder whenever whenever I go on any kind of subreddit, or and on any kind of I guess just tweet storm of someone who just has this intricate knowledge and expertise about an area that I know nothing about. In fact, until that moment, I didn't even know existed. I can't help but just have this insane awe and inspiration for like what could be possible if only we had a few more, thousand, tens of thousands, million years to keep going. Like all of the kind of like local knowledge that is hidden and tucked away, and the incredible complexity of communities that are contributing to this, and the insane things that they find out are so exciting. If only I had more time, like I would just go down all of these rabbit holes. And I think as a civilization, it's true as well, right? There's so much on the line, and so much even more that is unknown that we could discover, that I think it's just really mostly from a pure sense of wonder and excitement for what we could do, and a really great humility at what people are already doing. So yeah, it's a very rounded way of saying, A, I think we're accelerating and it is getting more urgent, and then B, also just imagine. I think both of them are definitely, I think, quite real. And yeah.
So I see some sense of like responsibility, but as well a lot of like cultivation of your own, wonder and awe and all that stuff. That's definitely, I resonate with it as well. And I think there was a nice segue when you mentioned Reddit. How sometimes, like when you don't maybe cultivate your social media that well, the overwhelming news from the maybe worse futures than the better ones are the more like pronounced. So how, this is more of like a practical maybe question, how are you handling like social media, or how are you using it? Because I see on myself as well, and I need to sometimes take a break, but that when I'm too much in the sauce, I would say, then it, even though there's a lot of information, the information usually isn't that good, or even that positive, I would say. So then, it becomes easier to be less, I guess, optimistic, or like, something like that. So how do you work with that, or what's your approach to social media and overall like consuming news and all that stuff?
Well, rule number 1, go on Bolek's Twitter. And rule number 2, go on Bolek's podcast. No, but seriously, I think what you're doing, I very much enjoy just looking at your Twitter. I think you, like, even just the other day, I think you shared those fantastical organic architectural structures, and it's really nice. You have a good aesthetic eye, and I think that's kind of uplifting. So thanks for that. But in addition to but more an end, I don't really do social media or in fact any type of media very well at all, which I guess seems strange because I run those more virtual groups. But apart from that, I usually have my phone on flight mode, or at least on the sleeping mode. So I get very many non-nice interactions with people because they think that I'm ghosting, but I just don't like to have my devices around if I can avoid it. Then I am not, I guess, not on Instagram. Twitter, I recently joined just because I think as the head of an organization, you kind of do have to be on there. And through that, I actually really enjoy the community, and I guess have discovered tweets like yours that I think are really positively contributing to my life. But for the rest of it, almost no media, I think, is the best strategy, or like no social media is my best strategy for social media, as little as you can, really. And then I think what I would like to see really is something, and I think this was discussed once at an EA conference, of just doing a ticker, like a news magazine that is really focused on just like, what are the actual positive occurrences that are happening on a daily basis, like what are the things that we don't see that are hidden behind the behind all of it. Because news are really, like, the negativity of news is almost a sign for how good we are already doing, because news are about the things that are uncommon. And those things that are uncommon are usually the negative things that we then worry about a lot. But this is a bias, right? Because it means that most of the time, the things that are happening that we don't have to report are pretty good. And so if only we had a newspaper that was just like reminding us of like, hey, you don't see it happening, but you're already taking this and this for granted, would be really lovely. And in fact, something like this already exists. It's called Our World in Data, started by Max Rosa. So I think whenever you feel kind of doomy and gloomy, instead of doing a doom scroll, maybe go on Our World in Data and look what's there. I think that would be a good one. Then the second thing that here's an idea. Oh, here's an idea that I often do, which is what my housemate does, is he has Nature magazine ordered to the house. And this morning at 6:30 a.m. in the kitchen, he was already there reading Nature. And this is his moment of existential hope in the morning. And I started to do the same. I now also order it. So, you know, it is just so tremendously inspiring what comes out in science every day. And then to have like a really curated walk through that, this really will start you off on a very positive note. So like reading Nature, doing a meditation on like what you've just read, the amazing things that we can already do, I would recommend that. And then maybe as an idea, something that, you know, I was thinking of doing maybe with Foresight, but it could also be maybe a beautiful collaboration, or you take it on, whichever, if it's appealing, is to do really almost a nature-focused, you know, podcast series where, you know, we just invite people that are doing fantastic work in nature. Like it's the best source of speakers. And then you could maybe do even an existential hope, like almost an essay competition around it. So let's say you have someone present, and they don't often present, I think, in the way that it's most enticing really for lay people to understand. I include myself. But if you had some, you know, really fantastic writers that basically you made a prize about like every Nature article should come with a column where someone who's a skilled writer just tells you why that technology is exciting, like a day in a life with this science where it's real, then it would be almost, wouldn't be a news magazine, but it would be a way in which that science would be communicated in a really actionable way. It could become part of nature, or if they don't want to take it on, you know, we do it in our own little weirdo ways. And it could be a prize or whatever. Anyway, it just, you know, I guess brainstorming. But this is a way that usually, yeah, nature gets me excited. Our world in data gets me excited. Our world in data gets me excited because of where we are already. So it's more gratitude to where we are. And then nature is like, oh, and look over here where we could go. And so then the current present, you know, worries of the day, they become much more irrelevant. Yeah, that's it.
Great. Many points that I could follow on, but I guess just like a few points. I definitely agree that you know, with our work in data, and there are even other some news sites. For example, I think it's called like Good News Network or something like that. They're trying to do just good news, even though the clicks that don't work that well, you know, on social media. And that's maybe like another problem with social media, and the conversation there usually end up in some kind of fighting, so that's not good. I try to like cultivate my feed on Facebook, for example, and even though like it works and you can get good news from it, usually, you know, if you're interested in many things, you get a lot of things there, and over time it's just like more and more, and so I think I will over time maybe be more on your side with like no media at all, or no social media, at least cut them off a bit. Next week I will like a drastic I guess version of that, where I will be going for a week into darkness. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's like
entirely into darkness.
Like, yeah, that it's just like you go into a house and spend a week in there that without, you know, windows, and just people are bringing you food, and it's kind of a meditative practice that people used to be doing like early in the like history, I guess. So I'll see how that goes.
Your first time, or
yeah, that's I was supposed to be going, I think like a half a year ago, but it didn't work out. So now is the nicer time, and I'll see. I'll definitely feel like there might be some you know, insights about how to actually work better with things that are going into my head, because I feel like I'm kind of like overwhelmed even with the media that I consume. So maybe having like a detox for at least a week totally, and then see whether I can like readjust to a better way. So yeah, that we'll see how that experiment goes.
That is
How,
crazy.
yeah.
I mean, Jun Yoon, I think, called it the elimination diet. You cut everything out of it, and then you slowly add what serves. But I'm very humbled and honored that I'm speaking to the last version of Boleg 1.0, and then in I guess a week from now or something, there'll be 2.0.
See what comes out. Yeah. All right, yeah, and I think, well, to follow up, I think you alluded to Foresight and what you could do with it, and I think that's a good segue to actually ask about like what you are doing, and mainly about I definitely appreciate that you're basically like with the work that you're doing at Foresight, you're kind of like enabling you're doing the most high leverage work basically by organizing a lot of the working groups that are basically like at the spearheading the whole like world changing technologies, or like the basically whole groups of people that are at the top of the fields. So like for the people that might be listening and don't know what Foresight is, if you can like intro and basically see what it is, how did you actually get there to work with them? Yeah, that would be interesting.
Sure. I mean, you could say I'm spearheading the community, or you could say I'm free riding on it by trying to coordinate them. I definitely feel more the latter. Big imposter syndrome, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, I guess if I give you like the official pitch, Foresight has been around much longer than I have been around, and well, not very much longer, but definitely at the time that I discovered it, it was already a major thing, and I kind of I got introduced to it because I was like, one thing that I guess always struck me as pessimistic was, even just going back to the Nature articles, is like what we can dare dreaming of, and then what's actually available. And with dare dreaming, I mean, like, what would be scientifically basically doable right now, or technologically even, and then how little we make use of it. And it seemed like flabbergasting, just like that there's all of these like really low hanging fruits, and some are hanging higher, that we could grab, but no one really seems to be interested. And I was like, what is this about? Like, am I the loon here? But then finally I discovered Foresight, and I was like, oh my God, they are totally just not only thinking the same thoughts that I had, but doing it much better. And they're not only thinking them, but really making them happen. And they are not kind of shy to really dream big, and to actually work really practically towards making those longer future term visions happen in anything from AI, crypto commerce, biotechnology, nanotechnology, neurotechnology space. All of those are really big interest in the community, and the craziest thing, they have been for over 30 years. So sometimes when I'm really upset, I go into Foresight's archives and I see that 30 years ago, with very little technological progress that was already out there, people were really just people were putting really ambitious visions out there and then making them into prototypes. Like, much of the technology that I think we currently see live, I'm always surprised by how when I trace it back, it has originated in some kind of Foresight contributor, collaborator. I'm not claiming this as all the organization's work at all, but I'm just really excited at the kind of community that used to be so up and running already 30 years ago, before much of the tech progress. Anyway, when I discovered it, I was just like, I need to know more. Cold emailed, and then kind of got onboarded, and like slowly held on and worked my way to the top, or into an organizer role. Let's put it this way, really, because I think, what makes Foresight special is a really long-term and intergenerational community of people that have been working on plowing away at those problems for the long-term future for a really long time, in a really positive spirit. And that is highly transdisciplinary. So sometimes when people ask me, like, so what does Foresight not do? Like, you care really about, like, I should say our main focus areas are threefold. They are AI and crypto commerce, so decentralized approaches to computing, and that involves also crypto commerce and blockchain, but really finding ways in which humans and AIs can cooperate better by putting structures in place which allow that to do that with humans, and then further out with AIs. Then the second field is biotech and health extension, and I guess we could talk about that more, but it's really trying to grab the low-hanging fruits in biotech and actually making humans hit longevity escape velocity. And then the third one is molecular machines, and that is really focused on kind of expanding on the work that is already happening on the molecular level to ultimately build out molecular nanotechnology, maybe even atomically precise manufacturing, which would be a total game changer in the way that we position really atoms with a precision that is unimaginable for us right now, and that we could unlock fantastic new opportunities and anything from medicine, energy, space, you name it. So like those are our main, I guess, focus areas. But meanwhile, I think something that Foresight really recognizes, which really drew me to it, is that innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen in a silo either. Like mostly the really important technologies of the future combine different fields. And so when people are like, well, but you also really care about neurotechnology, it's because, yes, it's an extension of biotechnology. If we want to have a long-term future, eventually even the computing group and the neurotech group have to merge. And so I think the future is a really wild place. We are often selling us short by artificially siloing technologies into buckets. And I think much of the best innovation happens at the intersections. And so I really love that about Foresight, that many people care about many technologies, not only one, but even the ones that care about one are good at collaborating with others that care about another one and finding fruitful ways to drive them forward. And so we do that by our kind of technical expert groups that meet on a monthly to bi-weekly level, that are invitation only and curated, but they also have application forms on our website. And those are in those three areas that I mentioned: computer science and crypto commerce, biotech and health extension, and then molecular machines. And so it's really trying to gather the people that are already working in these areas to give them a space in which they can coordinate in ways that usually isn't incentive driven in their industry. So, how can they maybe actually make an ecosystem happen that can just coordinate over the next 20 years in a high trust basis to move their field along that is outside of the constraints that they face in academia or their company or so forth. So that's a little bit what we're trying to do. And yeah,
definitely the whole like mission or like the thesis of Foresight is really great for me, for somebody who's like more generalist and likes a lot of different things. And then I can appreciate a lot how you're trying not to silo the things and actually try to bring them together, which is just great. And it's also great to hear that cold email works. I did that myself a few times as well. So shoot the shots if you can. Maybe the one thing that I'm kind of that we can segue this into is that when I saw the people actually who are in the groups, it was for sometimes I was like meeting people that I saw in different talks like for a long time, So I was wondering, basically, do you have some particular people or like idols that maybe influenced you heavily in your earlier life, and maybe if they weren't there, or if you didn't find them, that you might have been like on a completely different track in your life? Can you like remember some people or have some people like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's lots of people that I communicated with heavily through books. I.e., they wrote them, I read them. Including, for example, I think like anything written by Feynman was fantastically inspiring. Then Marvin Minsky's like Society of Mind, really amazing book. David Deutsch more recently, but Beginning of Infinity, fantastic book, so hopeful. Oh my god, I think it's chapter 9 on optimism. It's just it really is perspective shifting.
I have to read that.
And then, of course, Eric Drexler's Engines of Creation, which really led to the founding of Foresight, where he lays out a really fantastic vision of nanotechnology, space development, AI, and so forth in a way that is now more relevant than ever. But I think, on a maybe closer level, I would have to say 2 individuals. I hope they're okay with me calling them out here. One is Christine Peterson, who co-founded Foresight, and she is just this mad woman at making long-term science and tech happen, and has been for over 30 years. I'm always surprised by when I see a project forming that if I trace it back, Christine had her hands in the mentoring of the founders in some way or not. more than one founder of very, very big companies today said that their company wouldn't exist without her. So she's a total limelight. Whenever I'm at the end of my rope, I call Christine. It's my emergency phone number, and if she picks up, I feel she just does, like, she says a few words and the entire situation that I couldn't see a way out of is changed into something that is super easy manageable. And here are the things that you could do. And she's just, I mean, it's really kind of fantastic. And then the second person is on an intellectual level. I think the brightest light really that I know and have had the pleasure of collaborating with is Mark Miller. He co-authored the Agoric Systems papers with Eric Drexler a long time ago, has been a long time Foresight collaborator, is an honorary fellow at Foresight too. And he is just, an intellectual light of that, is looking for for parallel. I don't know exactly how to say this in English, but basically whenever I talk to him about an intellectual challenge that I see, he manages to rephrase that in a way where there's an easy way out that works in a super non-coercive, very inspiring ways for many parties. So this whole concept of like Paretotropism and of moving the world in Pareto preferred directions, he, I think, really lives and breathes that. Like, he finds a way in which problems become opportunities for different actors that care very differently. And I'm currently collaborating on a book on intelligent volunteer cooperation with Mark and Christine, which is trying to outline a vision on what would it mean if humans would be able to be independent of those that they disagree with, and then cooperate more with those that they agree with. What would it mean if we extend this framework to artificial intelligences over time? And I think he really lives and breathes this vision. And the times when we recorded the book via audio, and that was done at Mark's house in Sunday sessions, 3 hours long, Christine, Mark, and I, and they are some of the happiest memories that I have in the Bay Area. It was really, both of those people are fantastic and really inspiring. And if you get a chance to collaborate with them, then don't let the chance go to waste, I guess.
That sounds great. One thing that when you mentioned actually the Paretotopias, can you maybe talk a bit about that or explain for the people that don't know the concept?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Eric Drexler gave a fantastic talk on I think it's called Paretotopia even and it's I think it was at an effective autism conference. Mark has the theory, or the concept of Paretotropism, so more, rather than making it like a final end state, making it a process, out of an, let's say, concern about utopia as a place where you end up, and so it is basically just saying that if we find ways in which we can become more independent from those that we disagree with, it also opens up many spaces for cooperation with those that we do agree with. And very often in life, we have the opportunity to cooperate where afterwards no one is made worse of, and at least one party is made better of. And those are really the moments that drive civilization forward. And we have been kind of climbing those Pareto preferred hills on this Paretotropic graph in civilization for a really long time, just by virtue of the fact that we make it much easier for people to cooperate. And it would be really nice if we could extend those opportunities for more and more people. And so this is where, I guess, much of the crypto commerce aspect comes in, that is a little bit beyond the just, I think, exciting hype in the blockchain space right now, but that is more thinking about, if we think about all the local knowledge that is already inherent in civilization and all the ways in which people could cooperate. Just think about, sometimes you think, if only I knew the other person in the world who would want to do this, we could do this glorious thing together, and they are out there, you just don't know. And if you knew, it would be really hard to cooperate with them, because transaction costs are really high and they may be a stranger, you don't know whether to trust them or not. And so just allowing people to figure out where they align and where they could cooperate in a Pareto preferred way would be magical for, I think, our civilization's future, as seen from many different perspectives. Because the whole point of this is you don't have to agree with everyone and everything. You just need to find those that you agree with, and you should be able to cooperate with it in better ways. So the whole idea is really, a good analogy is if you think about how the internet has made cooperation across strangers much easier. Like, we are cooperating right now on the internet. I feel like I know you deeply, even though we have never met in person. And so that's via cyberspace, glorious, glorious cyberspace, right? And so the internet has made cooperation with strangers much easier, but our cooperation is still somewhat, I think, limited, by the fact that we don't really know about all the things that we could be cooperating on. And I do trust you because we've cooperated for a long time, but for strangers, you may not really know, A, all the things that you could be cooperating on, B, do you trust them to actually follow through on an agreement? So that's why the cooperative opportunities are very limited still. But if there was a way, for example, via smart contracts, to actually enforce that the other person that seems to be caring about the same things that you do actually will follow through with their proposal, it's a really magical way, I think, to unlock many of the kind of current bottlenecks that we have. And so just extending that outward to more people, I think, will set us up on really glorious trajectories. And so that's the concept for me. And I think, Eric in Paretotopia use it as even a little bit more ambitiously, and definitely invite people to check out that talk. It's fantastic.
It definitely sounds interesting. And even like, for me, at least, it sounds like, trying to actively seek like win-win situations, and also providing frameworks, or trying to figure out frameworks, how to actually do them, and allow people to be able to like work, I guess, act on those win-win scenarios as seamless as possible. And I think it also is a good different like view or different perspective how to look at, what can we do with utopias that are maybe too far away, and maybe through Paretotopias and also Paretotopias as, taking incremental steps like towards the utopias. I think together those can work really well. Maybe when we are like, if I take it a little bit a different direction, what are, to you at least, some of the like biggest problems that maybe excite you personally, and that maybe sometimes keep you from sleep, or maybe sometimes motivate you to pull an all-nighter, or worry about or working about it. So what are the things that maybe for you personally are the most interesting problems?
Well, I think, lots of problems, which are also, I think, really hidden opportunities. And I think so. In going back, I guess, to the beginning of our conversation, when I mentioned eucatastrophe as kind of the opposite of a catastrophe, is again introduced in the fantastic Expo paper. But I think that thinking about particular moments, perhaps even, which make the upside risk of civilization much, much higher, is, I think, a cool thing to do that is still a little undervalued. And David Mannheim, one of our fellows, actually is working on a paper on just really laying out which eucatastrophes are out there. So what would be the opposite of a catastrophe? What is like a thing happening where many people, maybe not everyone, but most people could agree that this was a really good thing that happened, and which afterwards makes our outlook much brighter. And I think, for me, this is solving aging. Aging is, I think, like, not only for out of the reasons for, wanting to be around for longer, to see what, my friends, my family, and then civilization at large gets up to. But if we had a way of actually solving aging, and with that, I first mean, delaying and ultimately rejuvenating and making it like potentially even optional, then you would immediately alter people's time horizons in a way where they can suddenly are able to think much longer. And yes, we would like to all think of ourselves as these ultimately altruistic beings that can already care about the long-term future and about not only our kids, but their kids' kids and kids' kids and kids' kids' kids. But it doesn't work for everyone. It also often doesn't even work for us. We already discount our own future health by so much, let alone, if you think about your grandkids, you would just have a different way of acting. So if you care about the long-term future, then I think actually making people have skin in the game in that future by making them have a significant chance of themselves being around for longer, or at least their kids being around for longer. So I think solving aging, it would be such a moment because it would just immediately shift people's time perspectives into a longer time horizon. So if you care about long-term futures, then this would be, I think, a really good multiplying factor. Then I guess, there's lots of these moments, I think, that are sometimes still a little bit hidden. I think, for example, advances in neurotechnology would be really exciting, for, I think, treating much of the depression that is currently really, I think, crippling many of the people that I think are doing the most exciting work. Just that unblocking this, A, because they're not suffering, and just B, because I think of the fantastic value that could be created in that absence. But then also thinking further of what would it mean if we got much smarter, just increasing human intelligence. I think even though it also comes with risks, I think would be a really fantastic way. Even just I guess if you go all the way to just brain computer interfaces, but even in ways where it would allow you to have more interspecies communication, expanding our moral circle in that way. Those are, I guess, tech dreams that I think are tremendously inspiring. I think even just space is still something where I think the overview effect that was achieved so long ago, with the first image of Earth, is something that we really shouldn't forget, how it changed people's minds. We weren't around for that, right? But it really did. And so I think having more people have that overview effect, by bringing space closer to humans, or humans into space, could also be really fantastically, drastically changing our long-term trajectory, because it would make people see, just like with aging, it would make people actually have skin in the game in their long-term survival. I think showing them, bringing people up in space, showing them how small and fragile Earth is, and also how much else could be out there to explore, would be another one of those. And so those are, I think, a few just tokens of inspiration. But then just generally, just the reason why I'm writing the book, I guess, is we want all those things, right? And we need to work on all those things, and it needs to be very different, specialized people working on them. And they will take time. And in the meantime, we should just try to not destroy ourselves. So that's the voluntarism in it, that trying to make sure that we find a way in which we can, be independent and not vulnerable to those that are maybe even seeking to destroy the world, but also to risks that are currently impending on us. Then we need to do cooperation better. How can we actually cooperate with those that have the same goals? You and I, space exploration, let's go. So that's another aspect of it. And then the third one is the intelligent part of it, which is we don't only should do that with other humans, but ultimately we need to do that very quickly with other emerging intelligences, because they're already there in very primitive forms. And if we could find ways in which we could weave in the intelligence of artificial intelligences that we're creating in stupid software programs, but that are very, very quickly going to be much, much smarter, then we find a way to accelerate the process. So I guess the Intelligent Voluntary Cooperation book is a meta strategy that I'm excited about, while individual people work on individual other things. This is why I guess I'm personally excited about the book, but there's lots of technologies that I'm very, very, very keen on having.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in many of them as well. And I think I vibe with a lot of what you said, because for myself, I actually formulated a little bit a different view, but mostly similar, I guess, because I look at I look at it from the perspective of potentials. And so for me, for example, when you look at the statistics, mental health and aging, those are basically two of the most debilitating, I guess, or not productivity, but overall health or wellness or even happiness reducing, I guess, or reducing effects, basically, or areas. So focusing on those is definitely something that I see is necessary and has so big leverage and upside that when we actually can do something with it, we should. And also there are obviously even better potential, for example, with aging. And I think you said that somewhere in a different interview. I think that aging is basically burning libraries every day with people who are dying by old age, and it's definitely something that I totally agree that when people go or I guess, transcend the initial resistance to the arguments, or like the first thoughts that come to mind when you say, oh, aging is something that's not necessarily good. Then over time, you at least that was the like journey for me. Then when first you get there through maybe like transhumanists and all that, this kind of way of thinking, but over time you see how many different things would actually like improve, and how it's actually necessary in the next decades. We'll need to do that somehow, because otherwise like the whole systems of like pensions and social securities and all that stuff will not be able to handle it. So over time there's a lot of more and more basic arguments why it's necessary. And maybe since that is maybe a good segue also to a different question, it's more maybe personal, but in a way, when I got inspired for like formulating this kind of like, I guess, purpose or something like that by Peter Diamandis, who is kind of a person who does this, I guess, popularization of exponential trends quite well. But he also has this idea of like massively transformative purpose, something that like personally yourself keeps you or like drives you. Have you like formulated something like that for yourself, some like statement, or is it more of like, you're already at Foresight, which has a pretty good mission already? So have you like more identified with that?
Well, I guess this is more like a quote, that I sometimes tell myself, like, it's not really a mantra, but and it's really cheesy, but it is, in the end, everything is good. If it's not good, it's not the end. And so this is like, I guess, generically inspiring, because it's just like, okay, look, we're not like, either it is not good, which means we're not at the end of it, but in the end everything is good. And usually people find that exciting because they think, oh, in the end everything is good. But I find it exciting because it's probably never going to be good, and that means it's not the end. And that is, to me, very good in itself. And so even though it's kind of like, a paradoxical, a little bit unsensical phrase, it really inspires me, because we will never be at the end of it. There is no true utopia, and that also means that potentially there doesn't have to be an end. And that is a really good thing in itself. So it's really personally inspiring for me for different reasons than, I guess, why the proverb actually exists. But yeah, that's mine.
That's really cool. And then I like the wordplay, not wordplay, but the packaging of that. That's pretty cool. Maybe what I was thinking about related to this, since I guess most of the, well, I don't know if most, but many of the watchers here might be young people, and I think that it's pretty hard to get actually, well, it's not easy to get to something that you know you want to do. So maybe do you have like some tips or recommendations, or maybe like frameworks how you would approach it if you didn't know, or some, what would you advise somebody who's younger and maybe doesn't really know, haven't yet got their own ball that they want to like pursue? What would you recommend them?
I think it's the first thing to do is ASAP find your tribe. Like, number one thing, I do think, like, being the only one, like, probably if you're listening to this, you already have a hunch that like more may be possible, and that the future could be great if we did something about it. And then the first thing that you have right afterwards is like, oh my god, but what's my role in this? Do I have a role? Like, what could I possibly do? I'm like, I really sympathize with that, and it was definitely most of my experience during most of my life, of just feeling a little alienated, just not many people, I guess, in my local environment caring. Not many people in my local environment caring about, I guess, the longer term futures, and then B, also not really knowing how I could possibly even plug in. And so I think first thing, find your tribe, and that could be either on the internet or physical. Like for me, I guess moving to the Bay Area really shifted my life somewhat from black and white to colorful.
One of the tribes that I see right now popping out in the cyberspace is Solarpunk. Do you know about that? Do you vibe with that? What's your opinion on the subculture, I guess?
Well, I think it's very exciting because it's taking, the kind of like super hopeless angle within climate and really turning into something really amazing, which is also aesthetically very pleasing to look at. So that's helpful. And yeah, but I'm not myself, really involved with that. I have to say, but I think it's I think anything that tries to create a new type of futurism because I think sometimes I worry about the fact that we've kind of lost imagination a bit, and that back in the days people had such amazing, positive future visions. And I don't really think we can go back to what we used to have. We need to come up with better, newer, more, more updated alternative futures that we can imagine that are more appropriate to the current realities. And so Solarpunk is definitely taking, the thing that is in everyone's doom menu and turning into something wonderful. So much support for that. And yeah, I think, there's so many online tribes out there, right? And they are collaborating. And I think that's really one, again, eucatastrophe that came from COVID is the fact that people are now on cyberspace and in a much more elegant way. And they just do it because it was necessary during COVID. And now they continue. Our groups run on cyberspace, and now not only on cyberspace, but allowing everyone to join. But now we also are expanding to Europe, because we were able to pick up so many people during the time when everyone had to be in cyberspace. And now we're kind of it's almost like everyone went to the cloud, and now the cloud can rain down in different countries, and we can just become like a traveling circus that does I guess builds up communities in physical spaces in different locations. But this is only possible because of the cyberspace community, and we're not the only community that's doing it. It's many communities out there that have gathered through COVID and that are now meeting IRL, in real life. And it's tremendously exciting for people, but not always necessary. You can participate from literally anywhere now. In most communities that have something that you care about have an online meeting place now. So just go and find them and plug in.
Yeah, that's great. And I really love the visage or the image of the mesh state or the mesh community that is online, but also then basically going back from online to the real life. Maybe since you discussed the I guess the future and what might be possible or not, also within the visions of Solarpunk and stuff like that, do you have a few or some perhaps unusual presumptions about the future that you think will become true within your lifetime, even though lifetime is a tricky word, so maybe a few decades, maybe based on which you operate right now and behave in the present, that might be non-obvious for other people, apart maybe from aging, which I think we both are somehow not, I don't know if counting with, but at least hoping that will be something manageable.
Yeah, I mean, I almost think that aging is one that is becoming more obvious to more people. I do think that we should take care of our parents and consider signing them up to cryonics. That's now my wish. I'm turning 30 on 9th of October, and so my 30th birthday wish is that my dad and my sister sign up to Tomorrow by Stasis, which is now a new cryonics organization in Europe. I tried to sign them up 5 years ago to the Alco one, didn't go very well. It's really complicated to do that as a European in the US. Anyway, that's just, I think it's becoming more, aging is becoming definitely more in our minds possible, but there's our family. And I at least love my family to bits and pieces and want them to continue to be around me. So we need to take precautions there. To all of you young listeners who think you will just make it into LEV, well, there's your family too. And okay, well, that's just one, not so hopeful, but we have to take care of this. And then I guess something that may not be that obvious, but even it may already be. So, I think that if you look back, there was AI boom, AI winter, then AI boom. Then, there was like biotech also had like a brief boom before, biotech winter, biotech boom. Then we had nanotechnology, which, is close to Foresight's heart, nanotech boom, nanotech winter. And now I think we're maybe seeing a nanotech boom again in the not so distant future, in the sense that, like, from running our groups, I feel like the kind of AI and crypto commerce one that people were excited about back in the days, that's totally having a comeback now. In the biotech one, you clearly see it too. We see it every day. It's having a total comeback now. Molecular machines, like that group, which is more nanotechnology focused, I see that as where the other two groups are right now. So the molecular machines group, I think, will be in 5 years where the biotech and intelligent corporation group are now, in the sense that many of the technologies and scientific discoveries that they're discussing are still a little bit too, too hard to conceptualize for some people right now to actually see that there's something there. But I think in the next 3 years, people will start pulling on academia and will be really trying to hard pull that into entrepreneurship level. And so very, very excited about the field of molecular machines and about the field of, ultimately towards molecular nanotechnology. Again, it comes also with tremendous risks and that, we need to deal with along the way. But I think this is inevitable. And I think this is still a blind spot for a few, maybe not after this, but the work that those people are doing that are presenting in our molecular machines group is nothing short, but like mind-boggling. It's absolutely crazy, and I think it's really gonna define much of the way that we interact with materials, with energy, medicine, space, really within the next 5 to 10 years. So very.
That's amazing. I'll have to check that out. Actually, I haven't been watching that many of those, so I think I'll have to keep myself up to date with that. But since we are talking about the longer view, I guess, without being too political, do you have any idea, or have you been thinking about what might be like coming post-capitalism, or how would you imagine that? I think I saw you somewhere mentioning something about UBI and maybe cake cutting that from the space. So what are your ideas regarding that?
Well, I think, I think that the capitalist versus non-capitalist word is almost like it's, artificially dividing sometimes. And it almost is a remnant that many people put their baggage on that doesn't almost apply even in the current world anymore, or at least the current world that many of us are living in the sense where I think, we have come here by, I think really virtue of the market. And I am incredibly grateful. And I think this is the best really way to make use of local knowledge that all of us are contributing. And so I'm really excited about those opportunities, because markets are corporation, right? They're building cooperative opportunities, and they're currently constrained and restrained by, all kinds of, let's say pathologies that, that are created and layered on top of it. And so forth. But I think ultimately making people cooperate, on an individual level, and making aligned minds cooperate is the most exciting thing that is out there. And so this more vision of, getting cooperation going across those that are interested in, and having independence from, other communities that are perhaps not value aligned, that they don't interact in a, let's say, negative way with each other is something that we need to get around to. And so I think that that future is the future that I guess we lay out in the book that I just talked about, of basically how can you find those folks that you value aligned with and cooperate with them on the things that you want to create, have independence from those things that don't serve. And so I think ultimately there's this great article from Scott Alexander on atomic communitarianism. And so it's basically kind of like laying out a vision of what would it mean if actually people that really cared about the same thing were closer together and were somewhat independent from others who cared about different things. Because I'm not the one to say that one future is better and one is worse. I want people to have the future they want to have. And if it doesn't have to interfere with mine and the ones that other people like me care about, even the better, right? So if you could have somewhat independent pocket of goal-aligned minds cooperating, and that could be either in different pockets in space, or it could be in different pockets, in cyberspace. I think that would be really exciting on the long run. How it fits to the UBC, like a universal basic capital approach, would be it's basically trying to make a positive out of two negatives. Negative number one is, we're potentially creating a future in which many people are left without any jobs, and because AIs can do that much better. Negative development number two is currently there's a lot of development and gearing up for space, which is very positive, don't get me wrong, but those that get there first may have substantive claims on the rest of the universe by virtue of the fact that they make use of it first, which, one could say it's super legitimate because that's Locke's theory of like mixing your labor with the land, and that's how you acquire property. And that could be fair enough. But what if you combine those two developments and actually try to give everyone currently alive a skin in the game in the very long-term future by saying, hey, look, we're going to take currently unclaimed property in space, and that's a very hard thing to define, and we will call it an inheritance day by which everyone currently alive gets some part of the property that's currently out there ready to be claimed, that will soon be made use of. And they could then treat that as an expected, they could then trade on the expected value of that capital with those that want to mine, let's say do asteroid mining, and they get the receipts of it and can use that as universal basic capital, to live happily ever after of that. And given how much space, or like how much property is out there in space to potentially make use of and build fantastical things that many people care about with, giving everyone a skin in the game and making it and making that available, either by benefiting from the proceeds of that. If you don't want to do it, you can just trade your share, and then live happily ever after on the proceeds, or you buy it off the people that it got distributed to, and then you can legitimately make use of it. So that gives everyone a skin in the very long-term future. It makes a few people that want to stay home live a really, really happy lives here, and given how much there is possibly available to distribute, very, very comfortable lives. And the other ones can go out and explore in a way where they have a really good claim that the property that they that they're using, they actually bought from someone who it got distributed to in the first place. So it's trying to basically, to lay a way out there that could be potentially exciting for many different interests.
Yeah, definitely like that. It's a like out of the box solution, I guess, or like out there, but that's definitely like something that I like and think we need to do more of. Like when you can just sit down and look what's out there actually, and then try to like figure out whether there are some possibilities that are maybe not that obvious or not that I guess explored yet, and what we could do with them. Which leads me a bit to maybe last segment, but before the few last questions that might be again a little bit more personal, but I guess this explains, or not explains, but illustrates your a bit like solutionistic mindset, I would say. So have you do you have a sense like where that came from, or like how you built it up? Was it something that came to you like naturally, or was it by your family, that how you were raised, or have you like some sense of like, have you introspected how did it actually become?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard that much of it may be also genetics. I'm like, I haven't looked into this, so I can't give you like I guess a feeling for for why I feel pretty chipper often. I have to say, like, my family is, I like them very much, and I've had like a really fantastic childhood. Like, I think the fact that I feel so young and like often really feel like I'm 17 is because that whole time was such a gift really in my life. And that's not only my family. I had a fantastic dog, and my friends from back then are are just are like superstars, and I'm still friends with my very best friend who I made, whom I made when I was 2 years old. So I think really, I think sometimes we undervalue, like sometimes we rationalize how bad the world is, but what we actually really need is really good community. And so we kind of almost rationalize our way into thinking that everything is negative, even though sometimes we just feel lonely, and I have that too, when I get stuck at work, I just forget that how crucial friends and family are to your well-being and also to your outlook on life. So I think that, seeking those connections, even if it feels only tangentially related, or even sometimes detrimental to your current work, you shouldn't forget about it, because those are the things that keep you alive. And actually, I think after the 100-year longevity study at Stanford, also actually living longer. So it's good.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely a good point, because that's what I wanted to point out, that maybe a little bit overlooked when I looked at the longevity field and people who are working in it, but mental health and relationships, and there's even something called, I think, village effect, where if you have a good community, you tend to live longer. So that's definitely something that we should care more about. All right, so as we are nearing towards the end, I have those 3 questions and then a final one. But the first one is, if you could bring one technology to fruition with a snap of your fingers, what would it be?
Wow. Wow. I would have to say, okay, yeah, I think so. Currently, I mean, you catch me off guard, but I would have to say it may be really advanced brain-computer interfaces that verge on whole brain emulations, because like that you solve aging, like that you solve somewhat of, I mean, there's the energy constraint, but you can explore space because you can explore any virtual world that you like. You can connect with people on a level that is just, I mean, it's literally unimaginable to us right now. And you could do that for many, many, many people. So it will be very available because it's not resource constraints, it's software. So it solves a lot of the problems in one go. Plus, also you may get smart enough that the whole Neuralink approach to AGI, as safety of just making yourself smarter. So maybe there's even something to be said on that angle. So off the cuff, that would be it.
All right, that's a good answer, and actually leads to my next question, which is exactly following up on that. And if you imagine that we all have already Neuralink, I guess, installed, and you could right now share one idea or one concept or mental model or whatever to basically all people in the world, what would it be?
The notion of Paretotopia, of trying to create independence between folks that don't agree, and trying to seek out and make cooperation easier across those that do agree.
Nice. And the last one is if you could ask each person in the world with, I guess, the same technology, just one question, or maybe people who are listening to this podcast right now, and they would have to consider the question and think about it deeply. Do you have maybe something that you would like to ask them?
Well, I mean, there's the standard ones, but I think this is a longer, windier answer. But if you think back of the day when you were a kid, and you kind of thought of a really small world, and of probably you were the queen, king, or whatever in it, and then suddenly you discovered that the world is much, much, much bigger. And first you were totally overwhelmed, and then you're just like, oh, but how exciting. Like all the books that I could read if only had the time, and all of the fields that I could study if only had the time. Trying to do that mental shift for the very long-term future in a way where you think like, what could be available really? Like if we only look back very briefly at the brief time that we have been humans, then let's extrapolate outward and just think about like, what would it mean to do that same childhood jump of like, maybe it feels a little bit like, the first time in a new country, like boarded a plane, like those memories of just like the first time when you've done something so utterly mind shattering to you that like really boggled your mind. Like this is the type of leaps that we will do very, very soon. Very, very soon. If we don't destroy ourselves, we will do those very, very soon. So what would it mean, like to actually think this further and to be like, what, like, just imagine, like, where actually would you be in 200 years? And not only think about that, oh, I would be doing this and this, but just looking at the history of the last 200 years and then taking into account that things are accelerating, just like do a day in the life of Oleg in, 200 years, like exactly figuring out what would you be doing. And actually before doing that, looking at like what happened in the last 200 years, and then maybe going back, 1,000 years back in the past, and then 1,000 years to the into the future, even just, and what probably your brain will do, it will think it's linear, right? And so even just extrapolating out what linearly should really be a mind fuck. But doing that, then trying to take into account exponentials, then I think you're really off to the races. So I think actually trying to really place yourself in those futures would be interesting.
Which is exactly the question that you basically predicted in my last one. I wanted to ask, and that's probably something that I would like to ask at the end, basically everybody who will be on this podcast, like what is your vision of the future, or how would you imagine a better future? Maybe you can be like as descriptive as you want and combine different ideas, approaches, technologies, whatever you want. But basically, like how does your utopia look like? And perhaps like what is the most overlooked or underappreciated thing that you might appreciate there that other people might not even think about right now?
Well, I guess this kind of definitely puts on my own, like you're getting a deep sense into my psychology. I live and breathe with FOMO. I guess this is the negative version of my excitement and curiosity about everything. Is that I also really, like when I say like I would love to dip into what that researcher is doing over there, I mean like really though, I would really like to know. If I had more time, I would just really like to know. And then there's probably lots more out there that they would really like to know, and I would probably also like to know that by extension. And so actually not having that, like in an ideal world, I would not have that sense that I couldn't have it all, because I can now like live rest assured that my life is not just one book that eventually comes to an end, but it's like a book with many, many individual chapters, or even short stories in which there are individual chapters, and I can pick and choose my own journey. And when I'm done, then I pick and choose a different journey. And meanwhile, knowing that those that I love and care about and everyone else can do a similar thing. And you kind of like, live and breathe together for a long time. I think a book that's interesting to read here is not only Accelerando, which is the obvious one, but Permutation City. That is, for some, not super hopeful, but I think it has this very weird out there hopeful component in there of what would it mean to live in cyberspace for a really, really long time, and actually creating new universes within cyberspace if an old one breaks. And doing that with someone who you love, and what would it mean if they change and does something different, but you still nevertheless meet every few thousand years. So I think like thinking about the really long game would be interesting. I think even then you'd have the problem of what ultimately it all comes to an end, and at least as far as we know right now. And for that, then I always recommend reading, what is it? The last, a final question, which deals with that problem a little bit at least. And so I think I would still have, that existential angst about the end of the rest of the universe, but at least we have more time to work on that problem. And that would be nice. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, just look, like all the thing, I would love to know what you're doing in 1,000 years, and would check in with you again. Like, given what you're already doing, this is just going to be, I would not want to miss out on this. So more of that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I can understand that. It's hard to put into words because, there are so many things, and much of them are actually, or many of them, or most of them maybe are even like not imaginable. So with our current software, hardware, whatever, I have like one idea that I always come back to, and I don't know whether it's from a book or from her, but like I really like music, and I like to go, you know, to dance to techno parties and all that stuff. And sometimes when you are in the flow and you like enjoy the music, and then you feel or see other people enjoy the music as well, just like imagining how cool it would be if you could just like feel like as a wave of the people who are there on the parquet or like on the dance floor, and just feel like, you know, as one dancing with the music and sharing the experience. That's just like one little moment that I feel would be like really interesting for me, and that I would like to sometimes live through. And you know, it's even funny because I recently showed my mom virtual reality for the first time and let her play, you know, virtual Beat Saber, and it was funny because I saw like this new like childhood energy being kind of revived in her once she got in. Then she, you know, explored it more, and it was really interesting to see how like new kind of technology that's implemented in a good way, or like can really again some kind of energize a person that was not that energetic, again, at least with relation to technology. So that's just like small snippets that I see. I think would make definitely more, you know, we could make more of those.
Yeah, that feeling of like sometimes you're just like, oh, I can tell you what I think, but I just wish you could see it from my head, you know, like, or like it's more feeling. And especially like, yeah, with music, totally just and I think that, you know, what I said previously of just like, oh, I would like to do this and I'd like to do that, that is still thinking in terms of what I know is possible right now. Like if we actually had something like PCIs, being able to communicate with other species, being like you and I actually having a mind meld, you know, and like tugging on all the threads that we can not really communicate on because we only have this to do it through, would be so incredibly exciting, right? Doing that with your parents, I mean, just mind-boggling. And we're not there yet, right? And I think I forgot who said that, but hope should be vague. Eliezer Yudkowsky, because if it's too specific, it's almost too painful, the delta that we're not there yet, and that's also very real.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah,
I think definitely just the things that we don't know yet, you know, having your mind rocked again in the next 100 years, we're about like, very much agree. And very much agree. Very much agree.
Great. Like I think that's a good ending point. Definitely thanks a lot for the point, for the talk.
Well, I can't let you go like this. No, wait. So what are you doing with the podcast? Tell us a little bit more about this. What got you to do this? And you know, what's
yeah, sure. I can do a quick one. Like I feel that there's not that many people discussing this, or maybe there should be more, and discussing their like visions of the future, and trying to, you know, I guess even though hope should be vague, at least put some small snippets of how it could like, and try to inspire more people. And I definitely see a lot of people who are working on great things and are, you know, like you, spearheading a lot of different like initiatives that are really like amazing when I actually like find them and learn about them. But they are usually I think they don't have the viewership, or like they don't have that the audience that they would deserve. So I would hope and try with this podcast to actually create this larger audience that could resonate with those ideas, and then overall learn about more of them. So that's what this should be about.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, you know, I have to say that I'm very, 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 just very excited. I think you have a really good mind to do this with, and a really, I think, just deeply optimistic approach while being grounded in like the technological facts of the world, and also just, I think, a clear enjoyment of life, which really helps. And so I'm super excited for what this podcast will become, and who you'll have on next. And I'll definitely subscribe. I'm very curious to see where this will be in a few years. And I'm very honored that I got picked as the first one. I hope I know you'll be up to amazing things.
Thank you very much. And I'm definitely honored to talk with you for the first time, because as I said, you certainly radiate the existential hope yourself. And I think there isn't a better person to start this with and spread the message further. So thank you very much for the podcast, and see you all sometimes later. Thank you for listening to this conversation with Allison Duettmann. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. You can find links to Existential Hope website and Foresight Institute in the description. I definitely recommend checking them out. It's almost guaranteed that some of it will blow your mind and make you more hopeful about the future. I would also greatly appreciate if you help to spread this message further by liking the video, sharing it with friends, and subscribing for next episodes. And if you know about people that radiate positive and optimistic energy and are focused on solutions and are building a better future, please mention them in the comments or in the Facebook group. I'll be glad to interview them next. I look forward to reading your comments and suggestions. And as the parting word, let me remind you of the quote that Allison mentioned and that illustrates how we can think about the future. In the end, everything is good, and if it's not good, it's not the end. I think it's a great quote that summarizes what this whole channel is about. It will never be perfect, but it is in our hands to build a better future, step by step. Let's each do the best we can, because if we don't, it might not happen. All right, see you in the next one.